Don't be afraid to try something new. What's up, YouTube? It's Sukh, everyone calls me Sukh, and welcome to a new series I'm starting called Sessions with Sukh, where I want to tell you stories about how cars have impacted my life. Things like how a single experience when I was 4 years old has impacted how much I love BMWs today, how I use cars to manage my anxiety, how the car community has now turned into lifelong friendships, how cars allow us to have new experiences, and lots more. So go grab a snack, get comfortable, and let's jump right into my car journey. I want to turn these episodes into also a Q&A. So if you have questions that you want to ask, whether they're about what I mentioned in this episode or just about the car or me, please do comment with your questions, and what I'll do is I'll answer your questions on the comments on this video at the end of the next video. So like many car people, I've been a car guy since, my parents say, since I was like 2 years old. I could name cars on the street just by what they look like and things like that. So I think cars have always just been an interest of mine. I wasn't really around modified cars when I was younger, but I was around a lot of cool cars. My dad's younger brother was the reason I'm so into BMWs. He had a couple E36s when I was younger, so when I grew up in England. When I was 4 years old, he actually brought home a brand new, this is circa 1993, so he brought home a brand new 1993 BMW 323 IS Coupe in some type of, it looked like tanzanite blue, but it's not tanzanite blue. But anyways, I saw him pull up, and when he got out of the car, he locked it, and when he locked the car, the windows rolled up. And I just remember being like fucking mind blown at the fact that the windows rolled up with the button. And he had had an E36 before this one. It was a black one. It was a manual 323i. And he was a doctor, so he upgraded and stuff like that. But when I saw that particular moment, it like made me fall in love with BMWs. And I was 4 years old at the time, and to this day, that's like one of my core memories on what got me into cars. That's pretty much the reason, or the day I fell in love with BMWs. Even people like my grandpa, I call him the king of the E-Class, because from the time that I lived in England, from when I was born in '88 to the end of 1997, when my parents immigrated to the US, he had every generation of E-Class between when I was born and then. So W124 was like a staple of my childhood. Then he had a W210. He never really upgraded after the W210. But he had a 201 before the 124 and stuff like that. So I was around a lot of cool cars. My uncle, one of my dad's cousins, he had a Mark II Volkswagen Golf driver's edition that I thought was fucking sick, and he had an Alpha Coupe and stuff. So I was around a lot of cool cars growing up in England, especially. Even though my dad, he wasn't really into modified cars, he wasn't really into working on his own car, but he liked nice cars. So he had a cool Citroen here and there. He had a Saab 9000. I thought that was sick. It was a white, 5-door Saab 9000. That was really cool. So I spent a lot of time around cool cars when I was younger, which kind of helped shape my car love even more. So when I got older and then my parents moved to the US, and I grew up in the Metro Detroit area throughout my formative and high school years. So Farmington Hills, Michigan, what up if you're from the Metro Detroit area. But those years are when I really started developing my love for cars more, right? So I was reading Eurotuner magazine and Super Street magazine, and when I got my license, I started, taking my parents' cars to school. My mom had a white Chrysler Town and Country that I absolutely despised driving. Eventually, I tolerated driving it, but for the first few drives or so, I just hated driving it. But until I realized how useful it was to be able to cram my friends in there. And then my dad had a first-gen Cadillac SRX that he would let me take to school every now and then if he was, not going to work that day or what have you. But mostly through high school, until I got my Mazda 3, which ended up being a lemon, so I don't really talk about it. I was mostly hitch and ride with friends. One of my best friends who lived in a neighborhood across from ours, he would come pick me up, drive to school every day and drive me home. One of my other friends who I had to hang out with, He had a Honda Civic DX, so like think 99, 2000 Civic Coupe DX, like base economy version. It was a 5-speed. He let me learn how to drive manual on it because it was his, like, he didn't give a fuck car and it was whatever. And then another friend of mine had a base model first gen Ford Escape that was a manual. I learned, how to refine my manual skills on that and so on and so forth. The first year of when the Mazda 3 came out, 2005, I, worked, saved up a little bit, and with my parents, we went to get this Mazda 3. But that ended up being a lemon because it had a faulty like powertrain control module. So that car was only in my life for like 6 months. And even though I was super stoked on it at the time, it ended up being like a massive headache. That was a very unique issue because we have a Mazda 3 in the family now and fucking love it. Mazda 3s in general are very good cars. I just very much had the wrong one. But in general, like through high school, I didn't really have my own car. I would just drive my parents more than anything because that Mazda was down when I had it most of the time. And, or I was hitching rides with friends. Once I turned 18 though and went to college, because I was going to school and living at home, my parents worked with me to get me a car. And that's when I got my E46, which I ended up having for 8 years and put 130,000 miles on. So that's the car, 2003 BMW 325i sedan in jet black over black interior with premium package and cold weather package, but it was a slush box. I didn't care. It was still a BMW. It was still an E46 and I was in love. So that car, I abused it. I put so many miles on that thing commuting to school. And then my parents ended up moving from Michigan to Virginia. So I would drive it every summer, every winter from Detroit to Virginia to see them. And I would, go see my girlfriend who lived like an hour away. I would go there and, go to other colleges because I was in college at the time. And, it just really got abused. With that said, I was very diligent about maintaining it because I was an avid lurker. I wasn't really a participant because I was so young and I didn't really have a lot of money, but I appreciated all the other builds on E46 Fanatics. So I spent a lot of time surfing E46 Fanatics, which is part of the reason that I was able to put so many miles on that car, because I was able to maintain it properly because of what I learned on E46 Fanatics. And that's the forum that I learned about BMWs truly, like what it takes to take care of them, the special care that they need. I always tell people, if you want a BMW, they just take that little bit extra looking after. So if you're willing to put up with that, it's a very rewarding experience. But E46 Fanatics and that car in particular are what introduced me to the car community and forum culture. It introduced me to real car modifications because my E46 had headers, it had Beamer brakes headers if you were around back then, it had a MagnaFlow full exhaust, had an H&R Cup kit suspension, it had a Conforti Shark injector, I had suede wrapped the interior trim, suede headliner, custom sub box in the back, OEM Euro tails and side markers and turn signals, depot headlights from Umnitsa, shout out Umnitsa. But that was the car that would like really introduce me on how to modify a car, how to set it up properly. It introduced me to modifying cars in general and forum culture and car culture specifically. At the time, because I was in college and I was kind of young there, and in Detroit especially, there wasn't really that big of a car scene that I knew about. So I was really just, learning from online resources more than anything. So after college, this is probably circa 2011, 2012, the E46 probably has 120,000 miles on it at this point. I get my first big boy job and it gets me to work, to and from work every day for a year, just driving it as is. I didn't really touch it other than modify the audio system. I put a newer head unit at the time. Double DINs were all the rage. I originally had one of those Alpine flip outs. If you remember the Alpine flip outs that came out, those interfaces were horrendously slow. So I ended up switching to a Pioneer double DIN that was like the new hotness back then. But that car got me through my formative years, and it still has a place in my heart even to this day. I got rid of it in 2014, sold it way lower than I should have to a random dealership that probably auctioned it off, but I needed something to get me to and from work reliably, and this car was needing to get like jumped in the parking lot so I could go home and stuff like that. So I eventually ended up looking for a new car and landed on a Volkswagen GTI. So in May of 2013, for my 25th birthday, I decided to go out and buy myself a brand new Volkswagen GTI. I specifically wanted a two-door, and I specifically wanted a United Gray car. So I worked with a dealership in Troy, Michigan to source a car, and the rest is history. I think it was like May 28th or something. It wasn't exactly my birthday, but I ended up taking home a United Gray two-door 2013 Volkswagen GTI 6-speed. So it had tartan interior, it was a base car, no Autobahn or nothing like that. But I was super stoked because it was my first brand new car that, that I paid for with real money and this and that. And, it was a fucking awesome experience that I had to getting the car. That was the car that introduced me to Volkswagen car subculture specifically, and that is still to this day, Volkswagen people and the VAG community, Volkswagen Audi group, so that includes Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, and all those sub-brands. Some of the nicest people, some of the most welcoming people that I've ever met, and I continue to this day. I tell everyone that that's the community that is the most friendly and most respectful that I've ever been a part of. But that car got me through impactful events, so I ended up moving, not about 6 months after getting the car, I ended up moving from Detroit to Kansas City for work. I was 25 at the time, and it was one of those like, fuck it, let's go, can't say no job offer things. Ended up moving on like a week's notice. The way I met my friends in Kansas City was I posted on Golf Mark 6 forums. I was like, hey, they had a regional Kansas City subgroup, and I posted on there, and I was like, hey, I'm moving to town, are there any people? And there was a group called KC Dubs. Ended up meeting friends in that group and another group called KCH2O that are now like lifelong friends of mine. I mean, these people were groomsmen in my wedding. They were, they come visit me when they come to town in Chicago. I still text them here and there, even though we live hundreds of miles away. And these people are like my family now. It's because of the Volkswagen community, and that was so welcoming when I moved to a totally new place that I continue to tell people, like, it's always, some of the most friendly people I've ever encountered, and I stand by that. But those people are also introduced me on how, what Volkswagen culture is. So I very much became like a Stancy kid. This GTI ended up being, APR stage 2. It had custom sub box in the back, very period correct Eurojet exhaust, catback. So I ended up having that. And I had a really sick set of Recaro Sportster CSs in it, which I should never have sold, but ended up parting that car out. But that car is what introduced me to really, really big time modification car culture and subculture, and influenced how I modify my cars to this day. Like I'm a very stancy guy despite having a race car setup. Like if you can't tell, that I know how to set up a car properly on how to fit it, and I learned that from the Volkswagen. Because of that car, I ended up even, getting another Volkswagen later, which I'll get into. But what ended up happening with that is, with the GTI, SOWO was a big thing in Volkswagen culture. So we ended up going to SOWO in 2015, which was the last one. And after that, I saw just how many people were in the game. Like I was trying to be in the game, and I kind of got put off in the sense that like, hey, I can't compete with this. I got other priorities, blah, blah, blah. It's really not something I'm willing to spend that much money on, right? These builds at SOWO were like, if you've been to SOWO, I was just a young 20-something-year-old at the time. So I wasn't really able to keep up like that, and ultimately ended up getting rid of the car just months later. Got back from SOWO, parted the car out, and jumped into the next car. So it's like July 2015, I've already parted out the GTI, it's sitting in stock form, and I'm just looking for cars on CarMax, and I come across a 2009 Mercedes E350 4MATIC, which is W211 chassis, last year of the W211 chassis, so it got all the right electronics. And it's an E-Class, and if you heard me before, my grandfather was the king of the E-Class, and the E-Class was always on my list of cars to own one day because of him. I went to go look at it. This car was actually in Kansas City at the time, local to me. Went to go look at it with one of my buddies. Everything worked out, and I ended up with a 2009 E350 4MATIC in my possession. With that car, there really wasn't much I could do at the time. There wasn't really a ton of aftermarket support, especially for a 350. This wasn't an AMG car. Very basic build, lowering, some rotiform wheels, some carbon bits, real junction produce, you know, pillows, curtains, went for like a Euro VIP look. But it was a very simple build, a couple firsts here and there, but nothing too crazy. But really the essence of that build was to make it look right, and it looked so good that I got recognized on MB World's homepage, which I'll throw up right now. And you know, that was a nice little, you know, pat on my back to know that I was doing something right with that car, to let it get featured on their homepage. That was my little toot my own horn moment for that car. And when it came time to get rid of it, I actually used that MB World link as a way for the dealership to see the car, which I'll get into later. What ended up happening with that E-Class was the most unreliable car that I've ever owned. And I tell everyone that if you're gonna buy a Mercedes, get it from CarMax and get it with a CarMax warranty. Because in the 22 months that I had that car, not even 2 years, 22 months, I visited the Mercedes dealership 15 times, and the CarMax warranty paid out $14,500 in warranty repair work. That included things like suspension stuff, which I'm glad they covered. It included things like belts and pulleys, which I'm glad they covered. Wheel bearings, you know, for some things went in twice for the same thing. God knows why. Maybe installer error, who knows? But electrical things here and there, because obviously it's a used Mercedes. But really that car was getting to a point where the service advisors at the dealership were recognizing me when I was coming in, and when I'd be there, they'd be like, "Sukh, you're back again? What the fuck?" And I was there so much that my essay actually gifted me a pair of sweet tickets to a Sporting KC MLS game because he felt so bad that I was going there so much. Shout out Travis, you're my boy. That car was just a pain in my fucking ass. The icing on the cake was when it was the last time that I was at the dealership for warranty work. Whoever was working on it or whoever was backing it out of the lift ended up backing it into a lift post and denting the rear trunk lid. The dealership called me and were like, "Hey, we dented the trunk lid, but can you come pick up your car? Because it's not gonna get here from Germany for like 3 weeks." I was like, "What the fuck? No, I'm gonna keep your rental until it's back." And he was like, "Oh, okay." Fast forward 3 weeks, I get my car back and I'm like, you know what? This thing is fucking cursed. I need to get rid of it. And I took that as the universe telling me that Mercedes was too ambitious and that I should go back to a Volkswagen. So I started looking for a manual Volkswagen, and once again, for some reason in Virginia, I found what ended up becoming my GLI. In May of 2019, I'm visiting my parents for my birthday weekend, because it always falls on Memorial Day, and I'm just looking for cars in the area because I'm looking for a new car, and there's a manual Volkswagen Golf at a Volkswagen dealership near my parents' house. So I'm like, "Hey, Dad, you wanna go with me? Let's go look at this car." I get there, they have the Golf, and he's like, "You know, why do you want this Golf?" I was like, "Well, I'm looking for a manual one specifically." He's like, "Well, I have this black GLI would you be interested in?" I was like, "Okay." Fast forward, we go test drive it, I like it, and you know, it ends up living in my parents' garage for 2 weeks while I figure out how to ship it from Virginia to KC. June of 2019, the car gets to me in Kansas City, and I had a very specific goal with this one. Was static build, super low, nothing too crazy performance-wise, and I wanted to shift good. So I immediately got to work. It had shifter bushings. It got a Go Fast Bits DV Plus because that's the best diverter valve on the market in my opinion. I have one on this car too. I also got CA tuned coilovers with camber plates and custom spring rates. It got an OEM set of 19-inch Volkswagen wheels off of a Passat GT. It had a custom exhaust on it that I had fabricated. An integrated engineering intake, you know, B9 RS5 coil packs with colder plugs, very OEM plus style build. That was really fun car. I still think the GLIs are super underrated, and a manual one specifically is a super fun driving experience. You get a lot of car for the money, and I had specifically, you know, wanted a manual. It made it super fun to drive, easy clutch, but in general, that car was great. And you know, I ended up leasing that car because I got really lucky that when I wanted out of my Mercedes and went to go look at this dealership in Virginia, we got to talking numbers randomly, and I was like, "Hey, you know, I've got this car. It's not here. It's sitting in Kansas City, but here it is." And I showed them this MB World article. They ended up paying the car off sight unseen, And I was like, well, I'm never gonna get this deal again if I don't take this, and to pay off the Mercedes, which I didn't even want anymore. So I said, fuck yeah, let's do it. So in any case, this car was leased. So at the end of the lease, this is now 2020. The lease was coming up in May 2021. So towards the end of 2020, I started looking for a car. And because the GLI was, I had a very specific vision. I wanted to be static low. What ended up happening was, because I had a wedding photography business and I had a lot of shoots going on because I was working every weekend trying to make money and grow my business, the GLI was so low that it prevented me from going to a couple of places where the actual shoot was. And I had to park like a mile down the road and then walk to the shoot location. Whereas my client, they just drove their car to the location. And I vowed, that happened twice, and on the second time that happened, I vowed to never let my love for low cars and just modifying cars get in the way of my business and making money. So not even like a week later, I called my boys. I was like, hey, we're taking the suspension off. I ended up parting the car out completely, put it back to stock minus the shifter bushings and the DV Plus, and just drove it stock for a year until, the end of 2020, because I needed to, go to shoots for my business, and I didn't want to be hindered in any way just for my love of cars. I drove it in that form to work and to whatever, and recreationally, for a year in stock form. And towards the end of 2020, I started looking for a new car, and I knew that I wanted a crossover or an SUV because I could still lower it and still have the ground clearance to get to where I needed to go. So I started looking for Audi SQ5s or a BMW X3, something in that high 20s, 30 grand price range. But then I started thinking, hey, if I stretch my budget a little, I could get a full-size SUV like a BMW X5. I wasn't really into the Audi Q7. It was way too bulky for my opinion, but I was a big fan of the X5 because my dad had an E70 for several years when they were new. He had a 2013 car, and I friggin' loved that thing. It was an 8-speed N55 car, and I loved it. And the X5, I was a BMW head. My dad's younger brother also had an F15 before. He still has one right now. So I started my search for F15 specifically. I knew that I wanted to buy the car through CarMax because I was very happy with the way the process went, and I considered buying a warranty and things like that. I also knew that I wanted an N55 car because they were reliable, and I planned on using this car for business, and I planned on traveling with it all over the country because I was planning on, getting married and stuff like that. I needed something reliable that I didn't want to leave me stranded somewhere, and I knew the twin turbo V8s had their own set of problems, so I was dead set on an N55 car. Missed out on a couple good deals here and there, and I ended up finding this one in December of 2020, also in Virginia. While I was visiting my parents over Thanksgiving in 2020, I had just proposed to my now wife the week before, and then I was visiting my parents over Thanksgiving break itself to, break the good news and, celebrate and this and that. And this car happened to be at CarMax in Sterling, Virginia. So I went with my dad to go look at it, and that was it. We checked it out, and I liked it so much that I had it shipped to Kansas City and closed the deal there. The other reason I wanted an X5 or a bigger car was because we were also adopting a dog. You've probably seen my dog Ollie if you follow me on social or seen the outros of these videos. My wife and I, we knew we were gonna adopt a dog, and I wanted something that was, dog friendly. So an SUV would serve that purpose too. But anyways, so I call it the dog car. If you ever see me call it the dog car, it's because I bought this car. I closed the deal on it on December 16th, 2020, and we picked up Ollie in Iowa on December 19th, 2020. So it's called the dog car for that reason. So if you see the Beamer post build thread or my Instagram or anything like that, that's why I call it the dog car. So it's very special to me. I call it, I joke that, it's Ollie's car and these are his decisions and things like that. But this car has a very sentimental purpose to me, and that's because of my little dude. So now we're almost at 5 years with the X5. Did I plan on taking it this far from the very beginning? No. This car was actually mostly stock for like the first year. I had a race chip piggyback on it, put the charge pipe on, put an air filter in it, very OEM plus, spacers, OEM plus stuff, Euro switch. But I wrote it like that because I was using it for my business, right? I was hauling all my photography gear. I have a 360 video booth business that fits perfect, and that booth fits perfectly in the back. So I was using it to haul that around. I was traveling all over the country because I was getting married in 2021. So this car went from Kansas City to Northern Virginia twice that year. It went from Kansas City to Detroit probably 4 times that year. This car has been to Colorado and, Oklahoma. It's been to a lot of places, and because I was using it, right? So it stayed mostly stock, and then once COVID happened and once I unlocked the ECU specifically, the spiral just kind of went out of control. We unlocked the ECU in 2022, I want to say, and went stage 1 off the shelf, 93. Then at that time, BM3 was still relatively new. They were working out the kinks on their maps, and what was happening was my high pressure fuel pump was crashing because their 93 map was really aggressive. I thought it was a failing pump, so me being me, I was like, let's throw upgraded pump in there. That led down the ethanol route, which led down this, all this stuff that happens, right? And now we're here. But all that to say, it wasn't my original plan to go this far, but as I reached each phase, I set a very specific goal. So when I started going on ethanol, I was like, hey, I want to be the first N55 X5 with a sub 4 second 0 to 60. And I managed to cut a 3.9 flat on stock turbo E50. Then I wanted to upgrade the turbo, and I was like, you know what? I want to run 11.7 quarter mile because that's the same time as a 700 horsepower Jeep Trackhawk. And if my N55 6-cylinder car can do that, I'll be very happy. And I was able to hit that goal, and this car has gone 11.4 on that setup. So I've been able to accomplish every goal that I've set. Now my next goal is to hit a 10-second quarter. So we'll see what it takes to get there, right? Unfortunately, if you saw my last video, the car is down, the transmission is donezo. I'm trying not to drive it. It's got a couple gears that are functional, but it's mostly just sitting for the next 3 months till I can get the transmission built. That's where we are with the X5 now. I have no plans of getting rid of it. We're coming up on 5 years this December of ownership, and I plan on keeping it for another 5 at least, if not longer. It's hands down one of the best cars I've ever owned. It does everything super well. And I recommend, if someone is looking for an SUV specifically, and for whatever reason they need, I always recommend an X5 if they're willing to put up with the added care that a BMW requires. But I hope you enjoy this episode. Like I said, I've been really excited about doing this, and I was really looking forward to it. So thanks for taking the time out to watch. Please subscribe, like, comment, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.